Okay, so I'm looking at the wrong side of my trousers, and I just want to take my waistband and slide that over the top. Now you want the side seams to be matching. So you've got the side seams of your waistband and the side seams of your trousers, and you want the front on the front. So the front is where the buttonholes are and where those pockets are. And then you want the back at the back. So you're going to sort of slide the waistband over the up edge of the trousers there, and then we'll just pin all the way around. So that little centre front notch I can match up with the centre front seam there. So I'm looking at the wrong side of the trouser, and there's the wrong side, so I've kind of got the wrong side there, the inside of the trouser, and the right side of the waistband, and then that's going to flip round to the front. So I'm matching up that raw edge there, and I've got the folded edge at the bottom, and that's what's going to fold round over to the front. Match up the side seams. And just pin that waistband on all the way around. So just start somewhere around one of the side seams and post that waistband on there. Get that lined up. So the raw edges are matching up with the 1/2 inch seam allowance, and then we're going to come back round in one big circle to sew that waistband onto the top edge of our trouser. Coming back round to the beginning again, back stitch to finish. So we can now turn the trousers to right sides out. There's the waistband that you've just sewn on there. So we can now give that a press actually to begin with. So pop that over the end of your ironing board and just give that a press. Make sure it's sitting nice and flat. And then we're just going to draw that waistband back over the top, folding it in half so that it covers that original line of stitching, and press it in place and pin it. And then we're going to stitch the waistband all the way around on the front to secure it in place. So I've folded the waistband over, pressed it and pinned it, and I'm now going to pop that on the end of my machine and sew all the way around the bottom edge there, right near to the edge, and it will just, you have a little line of stitching coming through on the inside, but it will just be a nice edge stitch on that right side to secure that waistband in place. And when we do this, we want to leave a gap at the centre back that we can post our elastic into. So I'll just start a little bit further on from the centre back, and I shall finish a little bit before the centre back, so you have a little gap there that we'll use for posting the elastic on. So I'll just sew right on the edge there, and I will use a stitch length of 3. And I'll go all the way round, but I won't meet my stitches again. I should, because I'll need to stop just before I get back to where I started, so that I've got a gap that I can post my elastic into. There, so I've got a little gap just there at the centre back, but for the rest of the waistband it's just been stitched on. So you've got the inside there, outside there, and we're now ready to we're nearly ready to thread on our elastic. We're just going to do one more thing first. So in the instructions it just says to come down 1/2 inch from the top and sew another line of top stitching all the way around, and that creates a nice sort of channel there for your elastic. So we're just going to do that first before we go ahead and post our elastic in. It does give it a nice finish. So I'll just start somewhere along a side seam. I'm keeping with a three length stitch, so I'm going to match that folded edge up with my 1/2 inch seam mark on my needle plate there. We'll just come all the way around, and this will create our channel. So attach a safety pin to the end of your elastic and thread it through the hole that you've made in the back. You can inch the safety pin along through that channel until it comes all the way out the other side. Now I've just used the full length of elastic that came in the packet. I think it's about 1 metre, and then what I'll do is I'll just attach those two ends together so that I don't use my elastic, and then I'll go and try them on and adjust that elastic to fit. Once I'm happy that they'll fit, then we can chop off the excess elastic and sew these ends together. Now, if you're making these trousers for someone else, the suggested length of elastic to be used is your waist measurement less 1 inch. So your waist measurement minus 2.5 centimetres, and you cut that, and that should give you a good fit. But because I'm trying these on myself, I can just pop the whole length of elastic through, try them on, adjust a little bit if necessary, and then cut down to size. So I'm going to go and pop these on now, just check that waist measurement is a good one for me, and then we can come back and just finish off this waistband area. So that's a great fit, so I can just now cut that elastic off. And doing it this way, you've now got a fairly long piece left over for something, for children's wear or something, so hold on to that. I'll take that pin off, and then I want to just make sure that my elastic is sitting flat all the way round before overlapping it and sewing it together. So that's nice. Whoops. I'll just put a wonder clip there to hold that together. This elastic is quite tough, it's quite difficult to pin through, by the way, but there you go. So that's a nice overlap. So I'm now going to stitch that together. Okay, so we will just pop that under there like that, and then just with a straight stitch, what I'll do is I'll come round in a square because I want it to be extra strong. Go back over myself a couple of times. I just want that join in the elastic to be really super duper strong. There you go. So I've just done sort of a little square there to connect those two bits together, and gone back over my stitching there, so that'll be nice and secure. Trim off those thread tails. I can just draw that back into the waistband, and keeping this area where my opening was, trying to keep that as flat as possible, I'll just pop that back under my, there it is, pop that back under my sewing machine there, and that area that's been left open I'll just now close. So just starting kind of on top of the existing stitches, just got to get rid of that bit of thread there that's in the way. Make it nice and easy to see. Okay, so I just hand my needle down to make sure that I'm going on top of my stitches at the end there. Make sure that my stitch length is at 3 so that it matches up. And off I go to close that gap. Thanks, Daisy. Trim off those threads. It's always good to trim your threads as you go. There we are. So that's now been closed. So there's the waistband of my trouser with the elastic in. The next thing that we're going to do is to create the drawstring that will go, and the drawstring will travel round in the same fashion and just sit on top of the elastic. So it kind of draws the waistband in a little bit, but the elastic's already doing that work for you. It's just kind of an extra decorative feature. So I'm going to use the binding that I had for this and just use that to make my drawstring with, because it's nice and slinky. It's part of the same range, so it matches up beautifully. But if you were using your cut out pieces from your kit, from your pattern, then you're doing exactly the same thing. So your cut out piece will look something like, slightly less wide, but will look something like that. What you need to do is fold it in half and then fold the top into the centre and fold the bottom into the centre and then fold in half again, just like you're making a binding actually. And then what we do is we just stitch all the way down that edge to create it. Now at the ends, and the instructions, I think they just say to paste on a bit of fray stop, but I just think you can just fold in at the end to give yourself a nice, slightly nicer finish than using a fray stop. So you can go like that, or if you want to, you can fold it sort of back on itself, sew down then the wrong side and then turn it through. What I did with my first one, and it worked quite well, was just to tuck the end in. So if you're making these ties using the pattern and not using a binding, then and of course you can use a tape, by the an actual cotton tape, or a cord, a fancy cord. I've got some nice cords with a little bit of metallic running through them, so you can do all sorts of different things. But if you're using the pattern, then you just need to get your 2 long strips and sew them together to make 1 long strip, and then you're going to press them as if it's a binding like this, and then you're going to stitch all the way down that long edge to create 1 long strip. So I've folded in the end there. Pressing that will also help to keep it in place, but I'll just use a wonder clip for now to stop it from unravelling. And what I'll do is, it's quite tricky to sew from that end because the feed dogs don't grip onto it. So a good little tip is just to start a little bit further down and sew back this way and then swivel it, because that way you don't have that awkward bit where you're kind of starting to sew right on the end of that piece there and the feed dogs don't quite grab it. So off I go. Because my binding's slightly wider, I'll just do a couple of stitches at the end there. Just to keep it in place. Trim the thread tails off. There we go, so that's that end done. I think that's looking a bit dark on my screen. Sorry, I hope you can see that okay. And then what we'll do is we'll now start from this point, which is a little bit further down, and I'll just carry on stitching all the way down there to the end of the binding, and we're just stitching right on the edge. There we go, so that's now just sewn together all the way along the edge. It's quite a long strip. And then I'll give that a press, and we'll get our safety pin and just thread that through in the same fashion as we did with our elastic. So I'm just going to take the end of my drawstring and pop my pin through it, and I just thread it in through one of my buttonholes at the front, and then round I go in a big circle again, just like I did with the elastic, threading it through so it'll just be sitting on top of the elastic there. When you get to the pockety bit, sometimes it gets a bit stuck, but you can feel that safety pin and you can just push it through and wiggle it round. Coming back round to the beginning now, and I can just see my pin coming out there of my my buttonhole. Now detach, and I can just draw it through a bit more. What you want to end up with is a situation where you've got an equal amount of drawstring on both sides. Just keep pulling it on through until it's even on both sides. There we go, that's sliding through nicely there. A little bit more. Okay, so can you see that is now, oh, gone too far. There. Nice and even. And then what I'll do is I'll just tie a knot in the end so that it doesn't get pulled through, and then just kind of wiggle the waistband out so that it's drawn through. Pull it again to make it straight. So there we are. So that's now the same length on both sides and drawn through on top of the elastic. Now make sure that your waistband is fairly evenly gathered. And the next excuse me, the next little extra step is just to come to the centre back of your waistband and just going to do a stitch here. What this does, it's just a little tip that they give you on the pattern. It just stitches your ties in position so that they won't accidentally pull all the way through and come out, which there might happen during pulling them on and off and putting them through the wash and what have you. So just pop your trousers under the machine at the centre back of your waistband and just do a little stitch along there. So I'll just start at the bottom of my stitching at the top of my waistband there, and I'm just going to, at the centre back, down to the bottom of the waistband, a couple of back stitches to secure. So it's inconspicuous, you know, once your waistband is gathered up, those stitches won't really be visible, but they will just stop the drawstring from coming out, and you know, doing that also kind of helps to secure the elastic as well, to stop it from twisting at the back. There you go, so it's just a little stitch like that, and that's now secured that drawstring in place. Now if you want to, they haven't arrived yet, but I've got some cord ends coming on the way, and what they will do is you just pop them onto the end of your drawstring tie as a little decorative touch. So I'm just waiting for those to arrive, and hopefully by the time I kind of do the finishing touches on this video, I'll have them to sort of share with you. So I'm just going to tie that in a nice bow there, and I think that looks really nice, having that kind of contrasting tie there. It's lovely, this Atelier Brunette fabrics, that you get the bindings and the prints, and they've got elastics and threads and all sorts that all kind of match up together really, really nicely. Waistband finished, we're now going to move on to doing the hem. Now on one side your seam allowances are equal, that's your inside leg. On your outside leg you've got this funny little area here. So what we're going to do is, if you remember, we stitched down to here and then we basted to the end. You need to just take your trousers over to your iron, and you're just going to press that raw edge in and then press it in again like so, and just do the same on the other side so that it's nicely finished. So press in and then in again like so, and then we're going to just stitch, whoops, it's easier once it's pressed, then we're just going to stitch along up here, across and back down again, and then undo the basting stitches to reveal the split there. So I'm going to take these over to my ironing board, same on both sides, and give that a press, ready to stitch. There's my cuff that I've just pressed in on itself. I'm now just going to sew up along the edge. So I've got a straight stitch, length 3, so it matches up with the other stitching, and I'm just going to stitch along the edge there. Make sure, let's move this back so you can see, so make sure that the underside of the other side of your trouser leg isn't getting in the way. And then we're just going to stitch along the edge. Again, I'm going to keep making sure that my trouser isn't getting caught and stitched up. When I come to the top there, I will just pivot round and then come across. Now with this bit where you're coming across at the top, you can go back and forth to strengthen it. And then around I come, all the way back down again. There we go. So that now has it stitching around the edge. I'm going to do that on both the sides. There we have it. Now completed on both trouser legs. So what we're going to do is now undo those basting stitches. They should be fairly easy to undo because they're nice big stitches. So we'll just get rid of them. They've done their job of holding everything neatly together. So just very carefully unpick those basting stitches and trim off the threads on both sides of the cuff, of the end of the trouser leg. So once that basting is undone, you've got a nice little split there at your trouser hem. The next thing to do is we want to create the hem itself. So we'll fold up and then we'll fold up again and then we'll stitch along that fold to create the hem. Now what they say to do is to do a guide stitch to help you fold it in the right place. So I think we'll do that, and this will just help to ensure that both of your trouser legs end up exactly the same length. So they say to give yourself a guide 5/8 of an inch, which is 1.5 centimetres. So we'll do that actually, because I think it is quite a good thing to do. So we'll just bring my machine there. Let's twist this round so it's a bit clearer to see. So all I'm going to do is I'll start at one side of that split. I'll match up my raw edge with the 1.5 and I will just whiz round the bottom there with a guide stitch just to help you press when you're pressing. It's giving you a nice guide. I mean, you could draw a chalk line on, I suppose, couldn't you? 1.5 up, but this way is particularly accurate to do it this way because the fabric can move around a bit with the chalk sometimes. But I'm just matching that raw edge up to my 1.5 centimetres, and then that's going to give me a nice guide. So there's my guide stitch there. I should take this over to my iron and I'm just going to press that up and press up again. So it's quite a narrow hem, and you could try these on at this point as well just to check for whether the length is good on you. The length is about right on me actually. You might want to make a deeper hem if you like, but so that stitch there is at 1.5 centimetres. I'm just going to press my fabric up to meet it, and then I'm going to press it up again to create the hem. Give it a good press, and then I'm going to sew all the way around along that folded edge. So it's a fairly narrow hem as hems go. That's fine. It's just, you know, that's how the pattern has been made. I'm used to hems being a little bit more like pressing that 1.5 up and pressing that 1.5 up again for a nice deep hem. but I'm going to go with the pattern. Again, you can check them on for fit if you like before doing this, because it might be that you want to make that hem deeper. But I'm going to give that a press, and then I'm going to stitch along that edge. So that's now been pressed, and I'm just going to sew just right along the edge there. Stitch length of 3 so it matches up with everything else. Couple of back stitches to begin with, and around I go. Like I say, just try it on to check that that is a good length for you before committing.